Welcome to today's class. We're just going to wait a few minutes, more like 2 minutes, to allow more people to log in and get settled, and then we'll get going with today's class. Okay, we're just going to give it a few more seconds and then we're just going to get going. I hope you all are having a great day so far and that you're ready to learn a little bit more about InDesign today. Okay, so welcome to Adobe InDesign Create a Flyer. This is part of our Grow Your Business with Adobe CC series. And my name is Caitlin Tips, and I will be teaching today's class. Today, I will also be assisted by my chat facilitator, Nikki. Please say hi, Nikki.
Hello, everyone.
So some ground rules before we get started. Your mics have been muted on purpose. If you have a program-related question you would like to ask, please do so in chat, which can be accessed at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Your text will only be seen by panelists, not all attendees. Any inappropriate behavior will result in your removal from this virtual program. We will try to answer the questions as we go along, but there will be time for Q&A after the lesson is over. A recording of this class will be sent out at a later date. Today, we will be covering how to set up and design dynamic flyers for all occasions, business and personal. This class is meant for all skill levels, and everyone is welcome in this class. We will be using Adobe InDesign to lay out, format all flyers and all of the flyer components, and we will be adding in specific example details for the purpose of whatever flyer we are creating today. So in the case that you do not have access to InDesign, there are free alternatives such as Google Docs, or there are access to Microsoft Word or Publisher at your local Plano Public Library. If you do not have, if you do want access to InDesign and you don't have access to the free trial available, all 5 of the Plano Public Library locations are offering access to Adobe Creative Cloud. So you can edit your flyers and other projects for free at any of those locations. So let's get started. First and foremost, what is Adobe InDesign? Adobe InDesign is an industry standard publishing application for print and digital media. InDesign allows for ease of access for page layout and web design. It is useful for creating flyers, books, magazines, newspapers, interactive PDFs, and more. So today, we are focusing on flyer creation. So what is a flyer? Well, at its most basic level, it is a form of advertisement typically created for either digital or print distribution. There are many kinds of flyers, which we will get into in a moment, but they are primarily used to promote job openings, upcoming events, promotional content, or even personal messages. A flyer in today's day and time are still a viable form of reaching your desired audience and communicating information in an accessible way. How is that done? through these kinds and types of flyers. So we have brochures. Brochures are actually considered a type of flyer. And that is because a brochure is an informative document that is typically formatted to fold. So this could be your standard bifold, trifold, or even a C-fold, which is the most common trifold method. So this locally grown flowers is in fact an example of a flyer because it is something that would be distributed to the public and handed out for free in most cases. And our second kind, a leaflet, is something that is formatted typically either single page or double-sided information. It can be formatted to fold once, but that would not make it a brochure. That is mostly because the size difference, the formatting of a leaflet versus a brochure is different in that case. And then we have our digital flyers, which are formatted for digital viewing, and it may include designs for web browsers, mobile apps, emails, or social media outlets. It also tends to be something that is interactive. So it is something where you could embed a link to your website or a link to an event calendar for registration. And of course, we still have our standard print flyers. So this would just be your standard poster displaying information. It also includes this math tutor example where it has a tearaway slip at the bottom. This could also be considered a leaflet because it is something where the public can grab and go, sort of like how a business card is a traveling form of promotion material because it is giving your contact information for a future contact. Are there any questions over the types of flyers?
We don't have any questions in the chat at this time.
Awesome, very cool. If you think of any in the future over what may or may not constitute a flyer, definitely let me know. I think the definition is very fluid because it's really, again, it's just about promoting your information in a way that is accessible to your audience. So this could be for anything like a garden party that you're hosting to a winter sale that your business wants to offer, or any kind of email information that you want to send out. So let's get into the design components of a flyer. So you do want to focus on the form, and the form of your flyer needs to have a consistent visual style. A visual style guide is essential for your business or even a personal brand that you have. You want to have a style that is cohesive and visually appealing. So what that really does break down to is if you're advertising for your business, you want to make sure you're using consistent fonts, consistent colors, and graphics for your flyer. All of this plays a part, and it's a part of what I call rinse and repeat in InDesign. Is once you have a set of images, graphics, links, or style components that you're using repeatedly, you can set that up to make all of your design components so much easier for each new document and each new form of print or digital material you are creating, and InDesign consistent and visually appealing for all future documents. So this is essential when you're approaching any kind of design, is what kind of form, so what style are you going for the print and end product, or are you designing for digital? Your end product is essential. This is because if you are doing something print, I would definitely recommend a serif font, which has these little ends on the font. So something like Times New Roman is great for print. But if you're doing something digitally, I would recommend a sans serif font. And that's just because it is easier to read on the screen. So you'll notice everything in my presentation is a sans serif font. It's a simple Arial. And that's just because for whatever reason, sans serif font is much easier to read on a screen. So you want to think about those kinds of things. You want to make sure they match your brand and that they are consistent visually. Next, you really want to think about the feeling of your materials. So if you have a consistent feeling or mission or personal goal that your company is known for, you want to make sure that that feeling is conveyed in your design. That is very much informed by color choices. It's informed by what the message of your material is and how you're displaying that information. If you have a logo or statement that is conveying an environmental impact, for instance, and you want to convey that you are sustainable, then you want to make sure that you are incorporating that feeling within your design. And you want to, again, make sure that is consistently incorporated in all of your promotional material, whether that is a business card, a flyer, or even something as simple as your logo. And thirdly, you really, again, you have to focus on the function of what you are designing. So I set it up here in form, and it comes all the way down through here to function. You need to know what the purpose and intent, the goal of your promotional material is before you set up everything in InDesign. So our intent in creating a flyer is to reach our audience and convey information, whether that is about an event, whether it's about a product or a upcoming sale, anything like that that we are trying to convey to the audience. We want to make sure that when we are designing for the intent, distribution intent, so if it's going to be print or digital or even a brochure, something that's handed out, we need to establish that first and foremost. Secondly, after that, you have to break down, okay, so if this is going to be printed, then I have to think about how I'm distributing that and what kind of color setup I'm using. In InDesign, there's two different color choices. You can operate in CMYK, which is for printers, or RGB. So that is for digital distribution. You do not have to format your colors in CMYK on the screen because it's simply unnecessary in terms of the pixels. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that is what all printers use for setting up their colors. If you've ever heard of the Pantone color wheel, that is what they use. And that's how they mix their colors based on those number makeups. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but this all does play into the function, and it really does play a key role in your purpose and intent. Because if you design something and you have the form, you have the feeling, but then when you get down to function, if you have designed something in RGB and you go and you print it, the colors will not match what you have on the screen. So this is the triple F rule: form, feeling, function. And just when in doubt, remember, are you matching the form? Do you have a consistent visual style? Is it conveying the feeling that you want your material to convey? And is it functional? Can your desired audience access it with the intention that you had meant? So that is what I'm hoping that everyone gets out of this class. And now we're gonna go over the key tools in InDesign, and we'll hop right into the software. So we have first our selection tool, also referred to as just the black arrow, and you can access that in the workspace. Typically it's over on the left-hand side. You can also access it by hitting the V on your keyboard or also just hitting escape. Next, you have the type tool, also in that toolbar. And if you hit T on your keyboard, that's another keyboard shortcut. And last but not least, this is my favorite, the rectangle frame tool, mostly because I'm the kind of person who likes to mock up everything. So the rectangle frame tool actually allows you to sort of preview your design. and organize materials. So if you have a lot of graphics or you just want to mock up what the outline of your page or material would look like without spending a lot of time worrying about the content, this is a great way to mock that up. Make sure that you have the spacing of everything in there correct. And then it also will allow you to insert content a lot easier because you have these frames already created. So while I get switched over to InDesign, are there any questions at this point?
Right now, there are no questions, it looks like.
No problem. If y'all think of anything at any time, do feel free to type it out. We are happy to answer any and all questions. Also, if you find that you're not comfortable asking a question in this class, we do offer a service called Book a Librarian, where you can request a 30-minute session with a librarian to answer your software questions. So, or any kind of reference related question, really. So now that we are in InDesign, I'm going to set up our document. Now I'm going to work with the time that we have in this class. If I have enough time, I will hopefully get to show you how to set up multiple kinds of flyers. But we're just going to start with something very basic first and foremost. So in InDesign, we're going to select new file. You can also go up to File and Open New and go to Document. If you have created something prior, you can also open it here by going up to File and Open. But I'm going to show you just how to access something from scratch. So we're going to New File, and this window should pop up. And you can see that our units are in what is called picas. I do not recommend working in picas unless you are very familiar with that unit of measurement. I'm going to switch to inches. The other popular InDesign unit of measurement is points. Again, unless you're familiar or you've learned how to use points in the software, I would just go to a standard unit of measurement. So for this first example, I'm going to, again, keep it simple. So I'm just going to create a standard print flyer. And I'm going to call it a print flyer right up here. And it's already set to a standard letter sheet. So this would be great if I just want to put a few on a bulletin board. I'm going to print it at home, or even if I go somewhere else to print, like a Staples or Office Depot. This is a standard size. It's not something that's going to cost too much to print. And you could easily print an example of this at the library or at home just to test and make sure that you like the design. So I'm going to, again, keep it fairly simple in that regard. Going through the settings, there is orientation indicated by these images. We do want to keep this portrait. However, you are more than welcome to design things in landscape view. It works well in many situations, but it's, again, all about understanding the form and feeling of what you're trying to convey. So I would really recommend landscape view if you're doing a poster for an event. But again, portrait also works fine for that as well. Now, below that is facing pages. Facing pages is a setting in InDesign really meant for instances where you have more than one page and you are working with something that will be bound together. So if you're formatting a book, a magazine, or anything like that, you will want facing pages turned on so that when you're viewing things, you can understand front and back and the bindery. But we're not working in that today, so we're going to make sure that's unselected. Now, InDesign will automatically pre-select facing pages. So when you're working in InDesign, you want to make sure that that is deselected. Okay, you can also see it indicates page number again. Scroll down, you can even format it to include columns. which can be useful for formatting guides. I'm not one to like to work with multiple columns. Column gutter is space in between columns. Now below that you have margins, and you can customize this. Now I think a 1/2 inch margin is huge. I think it's a lot of white space that you're putting on your document. So I'll bump it down to 1/2 of that. And if you don't need the same margin all the way around the edge of the page, this little chain, this link here, you can actually click it and it'll break apart there. And that way, if you change one, it will no longer affect the other. So again, just a fun feature to be aware of. I don't need things to be different, so I'm going to make sure that that is actually selected. Now below here is bleed and slug. And bleed is actually creating an extra margin around the edge of your paper. Bleed is an incredibly useful feature if you're wanting color to go all the way to the edge of your paper. What is important to know about bleed, though, is if you're printing from at home or using any kind of public standard printer, a bleed will not do anything, because what a bleed is actually doing is if you're working with a professional printer, they are actually printing your design on a larger sheet of paper and cutting it down to size of what you indicated you wanted your paper to be. So if we were to add in a 0.25 inch bleed here, what we are actually doing, and if we create that document, so I'm going to go ahead and click preview document for all our visual friends. If you scroll down, or not scroll, drag this window down, you can see the preview of how that page is currently being set up. So that red edge, that is currently our bleed. So when you put a bleed in an InDesign document, what you're actually doing is telling the printer, I want my color to go all the way past this white edge here, and they'll print it with the color to this size and then go through and actually cut it back down to size that you had indicated. That confused me whenever I was first learning, but it's very, very handy if you're wanting something without a white border. So it's important just to understand how that works. So even if you just wanted a bleed for one corner, that's just, again, something to recognize. If you were having a color go all the way to the edge on one color, it would still be a bleed that goes all the way around the edge for the size of the paper. Now you can make that different. There's a link there, but most printers would probably still print it larger because they would have to cut it down anyhow. And slug is actually, if you hover your mouse over it, it should give you a description. It's specifying an area for custom marks or job information. So this is specifically where you create a space to give instructions for your printer. So if you are working with a custom print house, and they accept InDesign documents, which most printers should accept InDesign documents, this is where you would include instructions for spot color information, or if you were doing any kind of fancy printing, such as foil embossing or de-embossing, anything like that, which I have covered prior to this in a business card creation class. That is what you would use slug for, is indicating those particular instructions or specifying what certain colors in your document mean or should indicate for printing. Now for a flyer, again, keeping it very simple, but I want you to understand what each of these settings are used for. So I hope that helps you set up the document exactly as you would like. Columns are, again, they're great if you're setting up a document for a trifold. Just in case that's something you are wanting to do, you would probably want to set your paper to landscape, create 2 pages, and set your documents to your column to 3. So if we have time at the end, I'll run through how you would set that up. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and click create. That bleed there, honestly, it doesn't matter at this point if you have a bleed or not, mostly because again, if we're going to print this with a standard printer, then it's not something we have to be overly concerned about. However, I did mention color creation, color usage in my slideshow. So if that's something that you forgot to indicate, you can actually go back and edit your document setup by going to File, Document Setup. You can also see that there's a panel open on the right that has editing options for the page itself. But just again, to show that you can access that there, and the intent is print at the top. You can also say that the intent is web and have everything update. Now, this is not my preferred workspace setup in InDesign. Up here in the right-hand corner, you can actually change the workspace setup by clicking that down arrow. And I've been working in InDesign since the CS4 iteration, so I prefer Essentials Classic. This has the panel in a more tabbed view. I don't understand why I can't see whatever option that is there. Okay, drag that out. That's very weird. Interesting. Okay. I think that's better. I think there's just something separated for whatever reason. But that's also a good thing to be aware of in InDesign. You can actually reorganize your panel over here. And your toolbar is then over here on the left. Now, if you are looking for a specific InDesign tool and you don't see it in your workspace, which I'm going to actually exit out of effects. So up here at the top window, that is where you would customize that. And I wanted to go to color because I wanted to make sure that we're working in the right color. So this is print. Because we selected the intent is for print, it automatically goes to CMYK. Now, if you were going to work in digital, that's again where I mentioned you'd want RGB. So if we were making this for an email, for your website, anything like that, you want to make sure you're selecting your colors properly. So again, this is just a simple print flyer, so we're going to make sure we're working on CMYK. Are there any questions over how to set up your document in InDesign? If not, that's okay, no worries. I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. So over here, this is that rectangle frame tool that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and mock up what I'm thinking of for this flyer. So I do have some example logos that were created from a previous course taught by another Plano library staff member. So I will show you how to import previously made graphics and how to do some other fun things. So with that rectangle frame tool selected, I'm going to go ahead and mock up just what information would look like. So another important thing is once you have a tool selected, let's say, oh no, I don't like that there. You can move it while it's selected with your keyboard arrows. But if you try and click on it with your mouse, that rectangle frame tool is still selected. So you're going to just create more and more text boxes rather than move around what you're trying to create. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And this is again where you switch back to that black arrow tool, your selection tool, and you can drag it. Now, InDesign has a great feature where if you drag it and you want to find the vertical center, a pink line will pop up. You want to find the horizontal center, again, a pink line will pop up. It's really, really great, but if you don't want to drag it around, another tool you can use is the align panel over here on the right-hand side, which will allow you to, by selecting align to and this 9-dot square, you can align to page, you can align to spread, you can align to your margins. I would typically, if you have nothing else on your page, align to page. If you have multiple items on your document, you want to align to selection for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule, but I'll try and show you some examples of what I mean by that. So I have that centered where I want. I think lower on the page is fine. I do think I'll want something at the top as well. So rather than creating something else, I'm going to Control C to copy this on my page, and I'm going to Control V and drag that to the top. Now you select both of these and you hit Align Horizontal Center. You can see nothing moved. If you wanted it aligned to the vertical center, they're now on top of each other, which is not necessarily what you want. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. And now I'm going to align to page. And I'm going to try that again. So now they're on top of each other, but in my opinion, they are actually aligned to the page rather than vertically centered between the two where they were from the selection. I'm still going to undo that. All right. Because now if you click and hold on your tools, anything that has that little right corner arrow on your tool panel, it actually is hiding more options. So I'm going to go ahead and use the ellipse frame tool and drag something here in the center. So I actually got pretty lucky with that first one, but I'm going to delete it and drag again to show you. If you wanted a real, like a perfect circle, the way to do that, rather than trusting that you can click and drag and click and not move and create a lot of circles that aren't what you're looking for. If you hold the Shift key on your keyboard and click and drag, it's going to be perfectly sized, no matter how big, small, as long as you release what you're holding to get the size that you want. Now, if you are clicking, whoops, so Shift and hold, drag, and you release the Shift key before you have it sized where you want, it's not going to size proportionally. You will lose that. So what I recommend is if you're trying to get that proportional shape, hold the Shift key and only release your click when you have it the size that you want. So going through, just deleting the icons I do not want. I'm going to make life a little bit easier for myself. This is aligned to page. I'm going to center it. And now I'm going to center all three. So if you click and drag, you can highlight all three. And let's see, I want to distribute the vertical spacing. That's a bit much. So Control Z. You can actually indicate spacing here, and it's going to go in your unit of measurement. So you can actually, rather than using the 2 arrows, if you know that you want, say, 2 inches in between everything, well, ideally that would work. Let's try that again. Aha. Then click. You can see that now everything is at least distributed a little bit more evenly. You can play with spacing. You can even play with the size just to have everything aligned as you want. If you click on this and you don't hold down the shift key, that's what's going to happen. It's going to just resize to whatever size you indicate. So resize that a bit larger, center that, center that. So it's not terrible in terms of a mock-up. Mock-up can be as simple as just saying, I want information on here and I want to see what this would look like. It can be as simple as just 3 squares on a page. And you find that as you adjust things, you're like, I don't like that at all. Delete. You may find that you need more space for more information. This is just a starting point. So if you're going to start adding in your graphics, start building this visual cue, something that I like and something I'm going to start doing is cleaning up my panels a bit more, because we don't need a lot of what's here set up with a lot of interactive elements. So if you've worked in InDesign before, or if you have any kind of style guide already created for your fonts, for paragraph styles, anything like that, then you're probably already familiar with styles. Now, if you're not and you haven't done this, this will make all future documents so much easier. So having character styles, object styles, and paragraph styles selected in your panels will make all formatting so much easier. So we're going to go ahead and have paragraph styles. And if you open one, typically it opens the others, which is a nice feature. Okay. Sorry, guys, I'm on a laptop and that just wasn't quite what I was trying to do. But you'll notice when you open these panels, you have basic paragraph, you have character styles. Nothing is set up right now. And that's okay. We're going to add those as we start putting content in this document. So we're going to build a flyer promoting a business. So we're going to start with this graphic here, and I'm going to load in a logo as mentioned earlier that was already created. So you can do that by going to File, Place, or Control D. So just going to find that image that's already prepared. You should now see a So Crafty logo that was created. So this is one of my favorite features of InDesign is when you place in content, if you right click it, you can find a setting called fitting. And what you can do from there is you can fill frame proportionally, fit content proportionally, have a content aware fit. Content aware will actually resize the frame to your content as you resize it. So if you need it bigger, smaller, it should adjust automatically. Fit frame to content, fit content to frame, center content. You can also clear frame fitting options. And you can also get into the settings and minutia of that, which we're not going to do today. That's a bit more advanced, but I do want you aware of the options. So right now we're just going to fit content proportionally. And as you can see, because of the shape that I had drawn to import this, this logo is actually saved as a square. So it's being cut off. But that's okay, because you can actually go back to fitting, fill frame proportionally, and it's even bigger. And this is sometimes something that happens, but let's fit frame to content. And it's a little bit better. It's no longer proportional. Fit content to frame. Doesn't do anything either. You can see that W is still cut off. So if you find that it's just not working because of whatever tool that you had initially used, so you can drag and do it manually, or you can actually just undo and have things adjust. Let's center content. So even after you outline things, you're always constantly adjusting. It's just kind of part of it. But as you can see, if I zoom in, which that's Control plus on the keyboard, there's edges here that are blurred. And the way to fix that in InDesign is go to Display Performance and select High Quality Display. So it cleaned it up a little bit. Probably means that the image that I had selected was not saved in a high quality pixel. So I would recommend that anything that you are using for your document has at least a 300 dpi, just because that's going to be good for print and digital. So you don't get this kind of pixelated edge here.
Caitlin,
Yes.
would you mind repeating the process of inserting an image?
Yeah, happy to. So that is called placing in InDesign. So just to demonstrate something else. So you can place into a frame. So I'm drawing this off on this side of the workspace. I find it a lot easier to adjust, but I'm going to show you both. So black arrow, if you're going to insert into a frame, it's Control D or File Place in InDesign. And you select your file and you open it and it should insert properly. Now, if you don't have a frame already created for your image and you do File and Place, because again, you do not have to, I just find that it organizes your images, all your content more effectively. If you're placing something into your file without a frame to connect it to link it to, it's going to hang on your cursor like so. And then where you click, so if you click on a frame, it's going to automatically deposit it in that frame. Control Z. If you click off of it, it's going to just create its own frame. Now, anything that you're inserting into InDesign should have this link at the top. And what that is it's linking back to your original file. So your links panel is right over here. So everything that you import into your file is there. And that's just so it can pull the highest quality information for your document. If you ever open your file and it has a kind of alarming exclamation point on these, it probably means the link's broken. Now your content is still in there, but it just doesn't have the most up-to-date connection. So if you had updated an image or needed high quality information, then when you go to change the display performance, it can't always pull that information. So that's just an overview of placing content. I hope that helped. So Control D on your keyboard, or again, File, Place, and right click, which select, right click, and then fitting options pop up. I hope that helped. Are there any other questions?
That was perfect. We got a thank you for that.
Awesome.
Oh, there are no other questions.
Okay, no problem. So again, these are just some previously created logos. As you can see, all three of these have a different style. And that is perfectly okay, because these are each things that can demonstrate different company values and feelings. So the PSI, that actually has a more stately feeling. And so Crafty has a more modern feeling. and Crabzilla has a very friendly kind of vibe. Crabzilla's, I believe the intention was for food, for a restaurant. And so it makes sense to have a mascot in the logo. So any kind of logo you have can be simple, it can be more colorful, but as you can see, each of these logos has different colors already in there, and that can impact your design. So I'm going to continue to work with So Crafty right here. And again, it's a very modern design. I'm going to zoom out because I want the full page. Didn't want to zoom out quite that much. So you can do that again with Control plus and minus on your keyboard. But down here in the left, there is a scale option for your view. So I'm going to bump that back up to, maybe not 75, maybe, oh, that's zooming in. Okay, 50. I don't normally use the percentage. Plus and minus typically works to get me where I want. But again, we're creating a flyer and I don't want to run out of time. So we're going to say that So Crafty is offering a sale, for instance. So things that are important to convey on your flyer for information. You would probably want the address if you're a physical location. You would probably want your business hours available. Also, you want to convey the intent. So if the intention here is that there's going to be a Halloween sale, for instance, on all sewing crafts that have pumpkins and bats and everything else. That is, again, something you want to convey. So because that would be a holiday theme, you could probably get away with a more spooky kind of font. However, you want this to be legible, and this would be print, and you want to match the logo of the store. So the logo right now is actually really big, and you actually may not need it quite that big. So what we're going to do is actually hold that shift key and resize it. Let's try that. Right click, fit content proportionally. And I'm getting very annoyed with the ellipse frame that I selected. So that's actually 100% okay, because I can delete it and start over. Black arrow, rinse, repeat, content proportionally, and now nothing is getting cut off, which is the intent. So I'm actually going to switch some things around in my outline based on the content I have. And I want So Crafty to be at the top. And next up, what I'm going to do is start thinking about my text and other graphics and information. Because the other side of this that I may want to do is display items that I have on sale, or just make that information more prevalent. This could be the same for any other kind of business, for a special on food, for any kind of service information that you're displaying. You just want to make sure that it is conveying, again, that message. So the frame tools, great for mocking up, not always great for editing, because it really is a container for the information. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one right there and switch to my type tool and click and drag. And as you can see up here at the top, my options have changed. And now it looks very similar to Microsoft Word. And it has defaulted to a Minion Pro. What I would say is don't worry about your font right off the bat, unless you have your character and paragraph styles already set up, because you can adjust that as it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and say presents. It would be great if I could spell. You could also mock this up in Microsoft Word, and you can actually import text from Word documents into InDesign. And you would do that the same way as file place. However, I would definitely recommend have your container already set. Text imports into InDesign a little differently than images. So I'm doing presents for So Crafty Presents this huge sale. So what I'm going to do is now highlight that, and that has a serif. And so I'm going to switch to Myriad Pro because this one I think is a friendly option. It goes with the logo design, but it's not as heavy on the serif as that. Another option, Century Gothic isn't a bad option. We'll see. I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to bump up the size. So just because this is print does not mean I have to go with a serif font, mostly because you, again, want to have a consistent style. This is a little bit better than an Arial because at least it does have a hint of a tail on it. So those are just things you want to keep in mind as you're designing. And resizing as necessary. Right now I have that in all lowercase. If you wanted to see what it looks like in all caps, you can hit that 2 T's there. It sort of feels like I'm shouting. So I'm going to unselect that. And once more, adjust the frame to the content and adjust right there. So that's not bad for now. I may play with that in a moment, mostly because I'm not 100% happy with everything else that I have set up, but that's okay. I'll leave that as is for the moment and get into that other necessary information. So another text box. And you can see, because we have not established any baseline for font, anytime you create a new text box, it's going to automatically default to that other font. So it can get a bit tiresome to constantly create something new and have to go back through and adjust again. But we're going to fix that. Black arrow, select presence, and I'm going to go ahead and create a character style. And by double clicking character style 1, you can actually get into options. And we're just going to call that text. We don't have anything to base it on, but get into the options. Because we have that text box selected, it's going to automatically pull the text information from that frame. So Myriad Pro 32. This is a lot more settings that you can get into. If you wanted to have any kind of specific light, regular, bold setting, you could select that there. There's a lot of fun you can do, but at this point, it's not necessary. So we're going to hit OK. Click that. It should automatically adjust that, and it did. Now, when you go to paragraph style, you can actually hit that plus sign, double click that paragraph style, and change that to heading 1. 2. So you should be able to pull and adjust what these are based on the character style you have in there initially. So I'm going to bump that size up to 75, just for starters. There's a lot of fun options in this paragraph style option. A lot of this is very useful for book creation or text heavy brochures. So if you need something specific, this is definitely where to get into the details of where everything is. When you're just creating a flyer, it's not necessary to get into the weeds with this. But again, I just want you aware that it's there. Again, if we were doing a brochure, this is where you could definitely adjust your layout, have specific styles like a drop cap, apply different style guides, bullets, numbering. Bullets are great for lists, and you can import different characters for that. And I highly recommend, if you're able to use open type features, definitely use a font that is an open type font. Open type also is generally open source, and it allows you to adjust everything about it, from the size, width, kind of text features. Very, very useful for both print and digital creation. So that's just an overview of clicking through each of these options. You're really at this point in time only going to need to be aware of general, basic character, and advanced character formats. The rest of this gets more useful as you have a text-heavy document. So I just want to again make sure that the font size is there, everything kind of makes sense, adds up. You can also preview all the changes you're making, but I'm just going to hit OK. So whenever I type, I'm just going to say holiday sale. As you can see, that's not the right size. So let's see. We're going to apply none. So if you have anything conflicting between the character and paragraph style, it's always good to see what's applied to it, because one may overwrite the other. Now up here at the top, this works very much like Word. You can align center, you can click off, see how it looks. And underneath that, you can even specify if it's 40%. Styles, for instance. Now, there's not a lot of lead line spacing between holiday sale and 40% off. As you can see, it's actually bleeding a little bit, and that's not a good look. So what I would do is actually, in the paragraph style, I would actually create a new style, double click, and base it off of basic paragraph, basic character format, size that down to, well, we'll do 60. Not as big as our heading style, but big enough to where you still see that. We'll call that subheading. So now we have to actually be concerned about spacing. And this is something in this option that you want to be aware of when you're going to have multiple styles or multiple text options in the same frame. So we want space before. We can bump that up to 0.375 and see what that looks like. So we'll hit OK. And you can see now we have space in between. You can also see that it's automatically aligned left, and that may not be what you want. So go back into that. That should be justification. No, justification is something different. Oops. Okay, alignment. Yeah, I just forgot to select that. So alignment center, hit OK, that should be fixed. Awesome. Anytime that you have a style applied and it has a plus sign, it generally means that something's up with how the settings are being applied. Now, in some cases, 40% off would be huge and wouldn't be this small, because when you're looking at this visually, it's kind of hard to say, oh, what's the sale? What's going on? So this may not be conveying the information in the best possible way. And I have completely lost track of time. I do not want to leave you with an unfinished project, so I just want to show this really, really quick. This is how you would set up character and object styles to get the text features that you need. Now, when you're plugging this in, plugging in all of your information, your address information, an email contact, anything like that, that's going to be with your text box, your type tool right here. And because we have this character style applied, because we have all that information already in here, it's going to make it that much faster. So just for instance, typing character style, apply that text. You can now say 111 K Avenue, Texas 75035. So you don't have to go all the way at the top, play with all the settings to get what you need. You can simply create your text box, go over here, click that style, and then it's just about moving around how you want things in your document. Okay, the same is for phone numbers, same for anything that you're going to add in. Now, this So Crafty right here, again, just to double check things, you can make sure that the colors are CMYK by going into your color panel. You can also make sure it exports at the end. So this is something I don't want to leave you guys without knowing. When you go to File and Export, you can export it as a PDF for print, or even an EPUB, or even as an image. However, I would say if you're going to export this for print, export it as an Adobe PDF for print. When you save that and you export it, it's going to pop up this export window. And this is where you can find all the settings. So we don't need to create a tagged PDF, and we don't need to necessarily optimize for fast web view. Now, when you go into compression, you can see that the settings are automatically set for 300 pixels per inch. That is a great, great setting already. Automatic PDF. JPEG is great. Image quality maximum. I highly recommend that you just leave the settings as is, but it's important to be aware. Marks and bleeds, if you had any of those, this is again, just making sure that everything looks as you need it to. So exporting, make sure everything's good, click export, and you should have a PDF. Now, I apologize. I was hoping to have this completed at the end of this class for you to view, but do we have any final questions about how to do anything specifically with a flyer that I was not able to cover?
Give it a few moments, but right now there are no questions.
Okay. Now, while you guys are thinking of any last minute questions, if you Control X, you can actually cut that. Backspace. for this promotional flyer, what I would do is actually resize that. I'd actually make this much bigger. Anytime you have overset text, a red plus sign will appear on the frame. Just saying, hey, resize me, resize me. And you can then apply other settings as necessary. Now I talked about the pink lines that pop up. Green lines pop up when you have multiple items on your page. For spacing, it helps you with equal spacing. It helps you with orientation of lining things up. Are there any questions before we kind of call it a day today?
Yes, one quick question. Can we see like a print preview of this layout?
Absolutely. So how you would accomplish that is down here at the bottom of your tool, you have normal view, and then to the right, you actually, if you click and hold, you'll see different kinds of view, but just that first preview setting would show you how this would print essentially. So it takes away all the boxes, shows you how everything is being organized on the page. Even though there's not a lot on this page, I promise that we did cover a lot of information on how to set up your document. So I hope you find that the basics covered in this class will help you be a little bit more comfortable in InDesign. All of these panels over here are, the information can be very overwhelming, but the best way to get familiar is to get in and just play with everything. Did that answer the question?
That did. Thank you so much. And it looks like we're clear on other questions.
All right. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending today's class and sticking with us. And I hope that this class helps you feel more comfortable in Adobe InDesign. Do feel free to check out each of our location. Each location does have an Adobe computer accessible, as well as the Haggard and Parr libraries have a digital creation space, which is outfitted with all the Adobe Creative Suite, as well as numerous other softwares that are available for you to make use of for your projects. And if you need any more assistance, have questions you think of later, do make use of that Book a Librarian service, as well as our online access to LinkedIn Learning, formerly known as lynda.com. There are so many resources and videos for learning skills on that resource. So again, thank you guys for coming. Have a great day. We covered a lot of information. Thank you guys.